to everyone for giving us a little bit of your time today. We're really honored to be able to bring this information to you. So at the school here, we try to use Lunch and Learns as a way to maybe fill some of the gaps that you're not necessarily getting really intensely in some of your classes. And so it was our intention, our meening, Audrey Kahn and I, and discussions through the Interprofessional Education Committee, which Tracy is a co-chair of that, of bringing in a guest speaker that could talk to us around working with individuals that are unhoused, and just kind of the considerations that go into that. So we both knew who we wanted to invite in. So this is Michael Moody. He is an alum, special place in my heart because he was in the first cohort that I taught here, so they wrote me in a little bit, which is great. But he's done just some amazing work since he's graduated from the program, which was 2019.
No. They've got a mic. I've got a mic.
Yeah.
Don't promise.
So, and he's brought a guest with him, James, who is also going to pipe in when he wants. I'm not sure how we're going to do this.
He's in charge.
You hang out. He's in charge, really. He's the supervisor.
Exactly.
He's the supervisor today. Yeah. So please feel free to, I don't think that we will get rid of all the cookies and the chips, so feel free to help yourself to seconds as well. And thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom with us today. Appreciate it.
All right, you guys start me off tough. Yeah, wisdom.
Sorry. All right. It's over to you.
It's over to me. I babble. So I'm going to babble a little bit, and we may have a PowerPoint to share, may not. I do best with questions. So I'm going to start with the origin story. I returned to school late in life to check off a box to finish my undergrad, and did a little career counseling, and ended it with, like, you ever think of social work? And I'm like, no. But I couldn't take any philosophy classes. So I took a social work class and kind of fell in love. I think trying to rein in my thoughts. I was in the restaurant industry for years and years, so customer service was ingrained in my DNA. And when I was finished undergrad, desperately wanted to get in grad school and had that period of waiting and anxiety. And I thought I should get involved and see what social work was about. So I ended up volunteering at Bethel Lutheran Ministries. They do a homeless outreach here near the campus, where I met my business partner, John Adams. Kind of during that process, I read Evicted. I got involved. They were proposing, I got a letter from my alder proposing the building of the Beacon Homeless Day Resource Center. I got involved in that. I started working with the county and the neighborhood associations, kind of getting feedback. And so I started off this journey kind of thinking about that intersect of community and the work itself. I did the macro policy program, and just kind of kept rolling. We got things kind of lined up. So I got offered a job with Catholic Charities, and I went over and worked with John at the Beacon. We ended up working together and hanging out a lot after work. And one of the blessings in there was we just spitballed ideas. And we are reckless, and we just decided to do things and then learn as we went. At the Beacon, are you folks familiar with the Beacon? A little bit? So it was a collaboration between the city, the county, United Way, to create a hub of services, the first official day resource center, a place to go to get connected to resource. So John was running it, I was doing the community partner relations. By the time we left, we had 27 partner agencies on site. I did a lot of work in the community with neighborhood associations, local businesses, and I think the approach was to raise awareness, to have a person, a point person where the community could kind of call, ask questions, bring up concerns. And I think that that became kind of a pivotal foundation of what we tried to create with Catalyst. While working there, the big gaps of service was meaningful case management and what outreach looked like. So historically, we didn't really have paid outreach in our community. So it was volunteer basis, and a lot of it was food and some survival gear. What we wanted to do was take the services and resources to the community and give them that opportunity to get connected without coming to the shelters. And then case management is typically in this work very niche, as I do housing, I do employment, you know, and you're bouncing from agency to agency. And our demographic struggles with keeping a phone, keeping appointments, being in the capacity to really have meaningful interactions at appointments. So we, I'm all over the place.
You're right on target.
So just kind of a time frame. John and I are working full time at the Beacon. We are you familiar with RFPs? It's the bidding process through the city. They're going to propose a new funding source, a new program. Community bids on these things. You're all trying to underbid and oversell. It's the nature of getting a small slice of pie, and you're all fighting for those funds. So we had put an RFP, COVID happened, and they shut down all the funding. Everything got on hold. Historically, the men's shelter was run through churches downtown, so they were using 3 basements of churches. COVID happened, and public health wanted to kind of shift that up, and everything got moved to Warner Park Community Center. And because John and I are workaholics, we left the Beacon and then went over from 5 to 9 to help the process of the new shelter. And that kind of gave us an idea of how people move through systems. So how people interacted with us at the Beacon wasn't necessarily how they were interacting with the staff at the men's shelter. And that was a very powerful moment for us to recognize the relationships people build are more important than necessarily resources or anything else when navigating this stuff. So we did that for about 8 months, and the city came back and offered us a short little RFP for 3 months to analyze people that are homeless, housing insecure, and the business aspect for the square in downtown on State Street. That parlayed 5 times until we got a multi-year contract. After that first 3 months, we decided that we were going to do our 2 pillars, the outreach and case management. We went with the county to do CCS, so Comprehensive Community Service. It allows us to work with the person kind of indefinitely through time on whatever they want. So it was really wraparound service for a person that doesn't specialize in a niche where I'm done with you after I get you housed. Since then, we were able to get the first ever county outreach. So we do outreach to the city of Madison and Dane County, and then the CCS is also Dane County. Hey, how's it going over there? You should have a seat. Here, let me move this for you. Go ahead. What? This is a lot of technology, which I do not like technology. You guys really want a PowerPoint, or you just want me to babble?
Either way.
Your choice. Your choice.
I'm actually more comfortable babbling. All right, excuse. So yeah, thank you. So I think it's been a yeah. Please jump in.
What did you mean by meaningful case management? Can you say a little more about that?
Yeah, that was probably
I like that term.
So I think that there's been I want to backtrack a little bit. So I think there's been more politics in this job than I had ever imagined. I think that we have been blessed to having a really solid relationship with the city of Madison and with the county. But we've pushed and changed and challenged what that means. So the county or the city contract, we are supposed to do case management. So on average, we are seeing about 400 unique individuals in a year, and we're supposed to case management. So our question was, what does that mean? So I can typically, we do a needs assessment. There's something called a VI SPINAT, and I'm horrible with an acronyms. It's a vulnerability index, something. But it is a very, very personal questionnaire that generates a score that puts you on a housing list for supportive housing. And in many ways, it's the only really viable option for most of the people that we work with due to income and other issues. In fact, I'm somewhat late today because we had done one of these and we got someone got the key into an apartment this morning. That's what I was doing. And we do a lot of driving people around so that issues of follow through with appointments. So case management, I think, I'll just be transparent. I think that this work that we do as social workers is extremely hard. I think that when I went through here, I was at the Beacon, so when I was going through school, I remember sitting in class and people setting up boundaries. Self-care boundaries are really important. I think that I would push all of us as social workers to navigate that area of most everyone I deal with has mental health with comorbidity of substance use, impulse controls, anger issues, and they usually met with people that they work with most, like family. You know, they're lashing out at me even though it may not be anything I do, and so you have to kind of navigate that space to build a relationship to even begin to work. And I think that the system is set up where if I'm a traditional housing case manager, I do housing. That's what I do. And I'm going to work with you. We struggle a lot with other agencies that have that kind of 3-strike and you're out. You don't show up 3 times, you're disenrolled with the program. That doesn't work in my world. Getting yelled at. My client has a bad day. Like I sit in a lot of things like, nope, we're not going to help today. Nope. And I literally took a client outside of a court case and had a timeout with the blessings, and we spent 20 minutes resetting. So I think it's that ability to navigate the demographic of the people you're working with. You can't just have, you get yelled at and you're done with somebody, because that person's going to be on an island by themselves. So I think thinking about case management in a meaningful way, working with people, like we just got a new office space, our agency's growing, we have all these therapeutic rooms and no one's using them because when we go out to the people, I think that's another thing. If you have office hours, again, doesn't really work with our demographics. So trying to adjust the service to meet the need of the people. And also not wanting to just deliver anything. And even in this, so when we first started, it was the stat that was most important is how many people you had housed. So we've done, I think it was 70, 72, and we're at about 60 this year. But when I challenged it, it was like, isn't it more powerful like how long they get housed? How long do they stay in housing?
Yes.
How many times do they lose housing? I had an individual that we moved 3 times in a year, never got evicted. But that's an important stat. And so I think those are some of the things that I would challenge us as we do this work to really think about. And I think that for all of you that are in this field, the idea of advocacy has to be not only for your client, but for your agency, for the mission, for your other partners with the agencies. That's all advocacy work. Challenge people that don't do their job. Challenge policies that don't make sense. And we talk a lot about don't take no as you're done. Take no as you have to figure out something outside the box to make. It's always the goal. If you hear no and you stop, then you're going to lose the trust of the people. I babbled. So I think some of the things I wanted to talk about is to kind of challenge terms and language. I think we talk about homelessness as this umbrella thing of someone who doesn't have traditional housing. So we talk a lot about unsheltered, people that are accessing shelter versus people on the street. Our contract is specifically for people that don't really access the shelter. You're gonna figure, you'll need to figure out loopholes. How to read your contracts, read your rules, figure out how you can kind of navigate around that. So ours is, if you're on the street one night per month, you're now unsheltered. So I only have to have you outside once, and then you're mine, and then I can kind of navigate that way. I challenge the city to let us go to the shelters and work with people. We do a little bit, they don't. But I think, what does homelessness mean? We recently started working a lot with families. We had an incredible staff member who kicked John and I in the tush and challenged us, why aren't we doing that? It's scary. Families are challenging you. We work with kiddos, and you get the highest praise for that because it's emotionally challenging. But if you think about it, I'm sure some of you have seen the folks that are downtown. So people that are downtown typically have higher social ability to interact. They're looking, perhaps they're panhandling. They're okay with people that they don't know. I work a lot with trying to find people in wooded areas hiding. It's a different type of person with different issues. Typically a little more intense drug use, hard drugs versus alcohol. I find a lot of people downtown are more alcoholics with other drug use. The people that are in encampments are much harder substance use. They don't want to see people. They don't want to interact with people. They have their cohort, and they're building relationships, and it's a survival. It's a different beast up there. And then you have our campers. When we started doing Dane County, that looks wildly different than what the city of Madison is. Mostly car campers, a lot of it's self-resolved, a lot of it is people camping out at truck stops, quick trips because you have bathrooms, access to food, and then families. So families, a lot of doubled up. Our experience has been that family units typically haven't burned as many social bridges, so they usually have family and friends that they can help. People are more likely to help kiddos than they are singles. Officially, government, all of our funding, doubled up doesn't count. It's fun because the school has a different set of rules, so they do count that. So we work a lot with the school social workers and have to navigate that fun terrain. But just that, homelessness looks different depending on who you are and your issues. I think something that, so John's background is he grew up in Chicago, had a lot of, they moved, his family moved here and they lived in Salvation Army when they first got here. So he describes himself as he's just one of those kids that escaped and he got out of it. But we talk a lot about what poverty looks like. So he has a story he tells of somebody he knows that gets a Social Security check for $900, his rent's $1,600, he figures it out. So you can be poor, but still be able to work the system to get what you need. And then you have poverty where your substance use. We have a woman who we helped get her Social Security, helped get a Section 8, got into the housing, but her substance use, she burns through her check using probably the first 7 to 8 days. So then it's constantly trying to support her to keep her from being convicted, try to, you're active waiting, like, hey, you want to talk about your use today? Interested in treatment? No? Then you work, all right, so how are we going to keep you from being evicted? And so there's that sort of thing, but there isn't a one-size-fits-all. And I think that it is being flexible on thinking about systems, but also thinking about you have to build a relationship with the individual to be able to navigate what they need to be successful. Yes, questions, I like questions.
Well, I can speak to that, the Beacon, so I am the social action chair for my synagogue, and I coordinated meals at the Beacon for years.
Yeah.
And I realized after years of doing that there was actually a physical barrier between us and the people we were serving. And as much as I tried to be kind and take time with people as I could, there was often, in the winter, a line of 200 people. And I realized after doing that for years, something was really missing, and it was building the relationships. So I now coordinate meals at the Tiny Homes community on Weaver Avenue, and we repeatedly see the same people and we sit down and we share the meal with them, and there's a lot of drug use and we say a lot of crazy things. The last one was, it's a good thing you didn't get burned, you know, because we're all Jewish, so that was an interesting one to navigate. But there hasn't been training really. I was in the public schools for 20 years, so I worked with all kinds of people. So I just see the importance in building a relationship, and I have so much to learn from them, from these people who have been, many of them, in repressed situations in their lives. So to change the narrative, you know, that I'm no better than them, and I can sit down and share a meal with them and get to know them. They can learn from me, I can learn from them. I can't change the overall system, but I can build into relationships over time.
Yeah, and thank you for that story. I think that brings up two, I think, really powerful things for me when I heard your story. One is, I feel like we are constantly tested on whether they will say the most outrageous things to you, hurtful things to you. They're testing whether you're going to leave. The shock value. They've had so many people walk away in their lives, and sometimes justifiably, sometimes not. But I think that there is almost always a testing time when they're going to see if you're going to walk away, see if you're going to stay there. I think it's important at that time to set up healthy boundaries about like, I'm not going to let you insult me, but we'll try again tomorrow. So that you're never just saying no again, but you're setting up, these are the ways we're going to have to interact. I'm going to show you respect, you show me respect. And maybe today's a bad day, we'll try again tomorrow. But that you're constantly trying to set up those healthy boundaries, because everything we do on a day-to-day thing should be setting them up for future success. I think that that's been a struggle with back to meaningful outreach or case management. I don't want anybody to find it acceptable to live in an apartment. If you choose that and you don't want to help, that's you're an adult. But we shouldn't, as a society, settle for that, nor should we let them settle for it. Your autonomy, but at the same time, you don't have to agree. I disagree with people all the time. It's like, you know, my job is to tell you all the things I can think, all the different options, and then you have to decide what you want to do, and I'll support you. But I don't always agree with you. There's a second thing that I learned from the building relationships. Ask lots of questions too. He's on the better than I was just going to try to talk over it, but
It's not gonna work.
I don't know if you mean that.
We started.
All right.
It was a cool one.
Short?
They tricked you.
I wondered if you could talk at all about Madison's anti-homeless initiatives. In particular, I grew up in this town, and I've just noticed, in particular with the bus shelters, how they've changed over the decades. Because back in the day, like the concrete ones used to actually give shelter. Now you got plastic ones that might, and also, were the routes changed in order to try to keep the homeless population away from downtown?
All right, so I often consider myself not the best social worker sometimes, so I'm going to just keep it 100 with y'all. I feel like you're asking really great questions, of which yes and no. So I think that, and one of the things I learned at the Beacon that we tried to take with us is, I think sometimes we're too understanding. So John and I joke that our people get a lot more leniency in the criminal justice system because they're homeless than he or I would. I'll let you decide if that's fair or not. But I think there's a lot of enabling going on. The people that I work with didn't end up where they are because they make great decisions, if we're being honest. Now, do they deserve dignity and respect and help? Absolutely. Now, I think your question comes to the city's job is multifold, and only dealing with homelessness is a small fraction. So they have constituents, they've got business districts, taxes fund everything that we do. And it does. So are there things that have happened that are definitely to handle downtown business? Absolutely. I think that the city has done a fantastic job in trying to juggle that. Is there been, so the interesting thing, the only legal place you can sleep in the city of Madison is one of the benches downtown. And the interesting thing is they start putting the dividers in between.
Right, so you can't really.
So that, it's like, all right, okay. I think that this goes to the struggle with how do you support people that historically don't want help. So you have a lot of people that are out there that aren't engaging in services, and they are challenging visually. They're challenging from a business point of view, because I used to work restaurants downtown. I wasn't necessarily the most understanding person, because I was dealing with a bunch of high-end customers that are spending a lot of money, and there's those things. So I think that it's tough. Did some of that happen? Absolutely. And as far as the rerouting the bus, I haven't heard, doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Well, yeah, it's not like they're gonna come out and say, hey, we're doing this to keep the homeless away from downtown. They
No,
can't
but I
say
do
that.
sit in a lot of rooms where I hear things.
Okay.
But I don't think so. I think that the bus has been a challenging nightmare for a bunch of different iterations. I think transportation is huge in the folks that I work with. I think that instead of necessarily, I think I love your question, and I think it's a really important question because of how do you navigate those conflicting interests. And that's what we have to really be honest about. And I think that in this work from the Beacon to what we do, so I sit and work a lot with DMI from Downtown Madison Inc. They run a lot of the pro-business parts of that. We work with the alders a lot. I have a fantastic working relationship with MPD. We work a lot with the Parks Department and schools. So non-traditional relationships. And what I would say is that the city of Madison as a whole is very supportive, but people are frustrated. I tell a story I've had a couple times where I've come home and there's been somebody that I know is homeless like on my stoop, and you're not staying there. Now I luckily know resources, I carry bus tickets around, I'm like, hey, so how's it going? Start off the conversation, it's like, yeah, you can't stay here, but where would you like to go? That is a benefit of my being comfortable doing that work, but I still think like, what do you do for a business? You know, I think that when we did a survey of all the businesses around the square and down State Street when we started the work. For the most part, everybody was pretty supportive. However, they didn't want the aggressive handling. They're concerned about overdoses in their bathroom. They're concerned about trash. That's legitimate from a business point of view. So I think it's that juggling of conflicting views and desired outcomes, so that you got to give a voice and a response to the business community that's frustrated, because otherwise their frustration turns to apathy, to more of an aggressive anti-stance. So I think it's really important to have that community aspect of that advocacy to like, hey, this is somebody's mother, brother's, daughter's, son, and humanize it, talk about the work, run interference. So we have business people that reach out to us about, hey, there's somebody that's like sleeped in my stoop, can you come and see them? And so there's a lot of that kind of negotiation, but again, I digress, but absolutely. And I think that it's been challenging because the Beacon's struggling, so you're seeing a lot of fences, cutting down trees and cameras, and a lot of architectural and design things to address some issues around that neighborhood. And so that's really ramped up in the last couple months.
Thank you.
Yeah, other questions? Yeah.
I want to go back to the example you used earlier of the woman who you were helping with housing, and she would get her check and basically use it on drugs, and then it was how do we keep her from getting evicted. I think that's a really important service, because a lot of organizations would say we're not going to help if that's what you're doing, and we're not going to help until you get this under control. And so from a funding perspective, are you required to report that? Do they push back, and how do you navigate it?
Ooh, good question. Know your contract. We volunteer a lot, and we try to, so she is a person that we've worked with on outreach. She is a CCS client, so that gives us a lot of freedom with this particular client. One of the things we did when we negotiated the final contract with the city and what we put into the county was so historically outreach ended the moment you got housed. We negotiated 6 months of stabilization for the outreach because of the relationship. And getting folks housed is challenging, keeping them housed is infinitely harder. So I think things to think about is you create, there's all those terms that should be better, like almost like a Stockholm syndrome. You're in trauma constantly, day in and day out, on the street. You surround yourself with people that are in a similar boat. So you are experiencing trauma, everyone around you is experiencing trauma. You trauma bond with people, again, making bad decisions. So you see people that will move in 12 people into their apartment and get kicked out for that. You'll see people that leave their apartment, even though they have it, and sleep outside downtown because they're going back to the people they know. So you have a whole issue of trying to separate a person who we talked to this morning when we took this person. So he can't be on State Street. That doesn't usually stop people. The woman in question is banned from State Street. She goes down. Recently we had to stop a fight in the middle of the road, separate them and get her back to where she was staying. But it's he talked about, like, I don't want to be down there, but I miss my friends. So now he's isolated, and he did choose to go away from downtown, which is somewhat good, but he's going to be in an apartment for the first time in his adult life, alone, no furniture, no friends, trying to be sober. Wow. And I think that's an aspect of it. We had a person, when you live, and I'm going to use the word squalor, if you're living in trash, you don't wash your clothes, you don't wash yourself. We've taught people how to use a stove. I literally was like, hey, this is a trash can. You can just put your trash in here. And you can take it outside, and there's another trash can that they'll take it away. You don't need to throw it on the floor anymore. But you're reteaching someone who's kind of lost their humanity in some ways of how to live like you and I live. And you have to teach them that and support them while they're struggling with all the things. So housing first, you're familiar with housing first? Nothing's perfect. You're getting people housed, and unfortunately from the system's point of view, so our outreach group had the highest number of people getting into supportive housing because we just go do all the work. We're a mobile hub to do that SPNAT. However, we're taking the most challenging people with the most issues from the street and bringing right into housing. So the success rate's been challenging. Whereas people that are going to shelter have to show up at a certain time. You have to be to a certain degree sober. We worked a lot on that. It used to be you had to be sober. Now they're willing to, like, I'm gonna go through your bag today. Got anything you want to tell me about? All right, you want to throw it out? And they'll let you stay. That didn't be the use of way. But now you have to be somewhat sober. You have to follow rules, you have to get along with other people. So they've already kind of shown the behavior that would be successful in housing, but they're not really getting housed. So you got that systems issue. So that answer your question? Kind of? No, let me go try again.
Kind of. So because a lot of your funding is from like the city and the county, right?
So the funding thing, I did unintentionally avoid that question. We do a lot of, I would say that we do a lot of volunteering. So the city contract and the county contract are primarily staffing funds. We also negotiated flex funds, so every year I got about $60,000 I can spend on whatever I want for clients. And then some admin and stuff. So I just pay someone to do outreach. So they can do whatever I tell them. Now the housing thing, so once they're housed, I've got 6 months and then I can't work with them outreach and get paid for it. But I can volunteer one of our staff, so John and I do a lot of volunteering. If I can get them enrolled in CCS, then I'm golden in that. And as a business model, we didn't want to be reliant solely on the city and the county contracts because it's very limited. So CCS funds our agency to do whatever I want to do within reason. With it, I then use that funding to pay for people to keep people safe. Is that a better answer?
Yeah.
Okay, but it's creative.
Yeah.
So typically, for the city and county contracts, it's very specific, and we would have very finite abilities there. Yeah.
Hi, sorry I was late.
No?
I am curious about like an in-between space between the shelter and the individual housing. You know, for example, I don't know if it exists in Wisconsin, but I come from New York and they have sober livings and sober housing, and just like at a transitional period, it's not meant to be permanent, but it's a transitional period for the recovering alcoholic or drug addict to learn things like doing your laundry, and like they've lost their humanity as well. And then there are people working at these facilities, often in recovery. So I'm wondering if I'm curious on your thoughts of a similar idea with homelessness and the people who have come through the idea of coming through the program and giving back, like sobriety does and the recovery community does.
I would say, in my opinion, at best, wildly fractured and not working at all well together. So we don't have meaningful flow. We've been trying to talk about that a little more in the city and the county. I would say in general, funding for any supportive housing, the funding and the staff to support supportive housing is almost non-existent. And from what I gathered, that's kind of how we implemented it on a national level, so it's not really going well anywhere, and not well here. So supportive housing, there's many sites, so the person today has supportive housing in a fourplex where there's no site case management. There is two case managers for this organization. It's one of the biggest in our community that they bounce around. So he will get a visit today and bring him some food and get him connected, so he'll get a St. Vinny's voucher for furniture and a clothing voucher and that sort of thing. But in my opinion, that goes back to it's not meaningful case management. So even the supportive housing isn't, in my opinion, anywhere near what it needs to be for people to be successful. And then as far as sober living,
Something like it.
you will get called out in a second, my friend. I feel like it's challenging. I think that different providers do it a little better or a little worse. A lot of use from what I've heard without a lot of support. So if you're trying to be clean and going into that environment, it's pretty challenging. So typically, I don't recommend until a person has some sobriety under their belt to hopefully be successful, and then you're praying that something doesn't trigger along the way. But yeah, very fractured and not particularly meaningful in my opinion in our community.
Sorry.
Just a,
Follow up?
yes.
Sorry, Lark. Do you have people in recovery, like a recovery sector in your organization, like contacts within AA, NA? Yeah.
So we have, my business partner is our substance use professional. We have several people in recovery that on our staff. We have a pretty solid relationship with a couple different AA and NA groups. We've been trying to build a meaningful relationship with the Rockford Recovery Center, only because for our demographic, you're lucky to get 4 to 6 weeks inpatient treatment. There's no real meaningful inpatient treatment. My opinion, that isn't enough. If I got 15 years on the street doing heroin or now meth, is huge in our community, which is its own world of challenges, but 4 weeks isn't going to do it. So we don't have in our community a system for meaningful inpatient treatment to really deal with substance use. So Rockford rescue mission is up to a year. So we're trying, we drove someone there a month ago just to check the place out. Ended up not wanting to, but it's like that's how desperate we are to try to get someone to have meaningful inpatient. I think if my memory, you're next,
Yeah.
and someone in the middle, and then you.
Earlier, you said that you have a pretty positive working relationship with the police department. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like? Because when I'm thinking of doing this kind of work, I'm so reticent to even work with police just because I don't want to cause more harm. But I know that it's not realistic to imagine that we can work completely. We can just ignore that system. So can you talk a little bit about what that
Absolutely.
looks like?
And thank you for being brave and asking that question. So I'm gonna put you on the spot. Why? Why are you hesitant to do that?
I rarely feel like I've seen people leave encounters with police better than it was before.
And again, I say this with love, but I'm gonna keep pushing it. That's okay. And you get to give me a timeout and tell me to back off.
Yeah.
How many interactions have you seen with the police where you can base that judgment on?
Not tons personally.
And here's what I would say. So, full disclosure, John and I getting to know each other sitting in the basement of Bethel Church. And the police came and knocked on the door. He and I fought about who was going to go talk to him. I ain't doing this. I'm a black man. I ain't doing this. I'm like, man, you really going to do that to me? All right, I'll go do it. It was an earned relationship. And what I would say is, as a society, we're forcing police to be social workers. And here's, since then I now have a couple of friends around the force. Most people are doing that job because they want to give back and help their community. You do have some people. There's good people and there's bad people and everything. There's some bad social workers that have come out of here. I guarantee it, I don't even know. People are people. You don't go into that line of work to get rich. You don't go in it for the praise. So something's motivating you to do that. So I think that what we developed a little bit at Bethel, and really at the Beacon, is they don't want to arrest people. They recognize the cycle, but they don't know what to do. So our point of view is we were going to give them a tool in their tool belt so they don't have to. So I remember a very powerful, this is probably the first 6 months, we're walking down State Street, and I got 4 officers talking to a bunch of people we know. And they're like, oh, it's you guys. And they left. I'm like, what the? But I think that as social workers and in this demographic, you have to take everybody that you can that's willing to help and use that to your advantage. It's always about relationships. So what we have is, I had a person that was up for housing that's very challenging to get a hold of. I asked the officers, hey, if you see them, will you get a hold of me? And they did. They found someone for housing for me. They'll call me and tell me if someone's deteriorating, whether their drug use is up, whether they're like, hey man, if I get another disorderly on them, they're gonna get arrested. Here's the weird fact, did you know that as an officer, I can decide whether I'm going to give you a no more doing that disorderly, and you get a ticket, and it's municipal, or I can arrest you and put you in jail. That's officer discretion. Oh. So now they'll talk to me about, we have meetings on, and here's another thing, it's like push, push, push. Address the problem, talk about the problem, talk about the problem, talk about the problem until someone's willing to discuss it with you. So we just recently were able to convince, and a little help from the police, to identify people that are chronically homeless, that don't access service, that are being sent to the hospital and the jail over and over and over again. And we're now talking with Journey, the city, and the county about how do we address this demographic of people that won't access, like I can't get them to do a SPDAT because they won't talk to me because their delusions are so intense. I have a woman who is an immigrant. She refuses to get housing because she wants other people need it more than she does. I've known her for 8 years and she's been on the street the whole time. She'll go in for shelter a little bit in the winter, but it's the police want alternatives to just the criminal justice system. They're hungry for the partnership. And here's what I would say, you'll meet, I would say there's been a little bit of a regime change, both on the city level and the central district police captain is not as understanding as the last police captain. If someone's a jerk, don't work with them. Find their boss, work with their boss. But they've been an ally, and they have helped us help people. And for the most part, they don't necessarily want to arrest. And usually they'll let us know, hey, this person's out of control, can you do something? And so it's been a good working relationship. But it was challenging, because I had my own biases there with that. I felt like there's somebody in the middle of the room, otherwise, all right. Oh, hi.
You talked about meaningful case management in relationship with people that you get housing for. What would that look like to have them work? And what's the difference in what they get from the organizations that get them housing and what you
need? Accountability. So we have lots of staff meetings. So we have the 2 programs, we have an internal CCS meeting once a week, we have an outreach meeting once a week, and we have a general staff meeting. And recently we challenged a provider on our staff about contact with somebody. Like, well, we called them. And I tried to muffle a laugh. I'm like, so they even have a working phone? Oh, no, they do. Okay. You go knock on their apartment. I don't want to be intrusive. I'm like, do it as a safety check. You got to knock on people's doors. You have to be available. Not only do you have to be available, but you have to navigate. Like, how do you keep the person in housing? I gotta. If you're working with me, I want you to ask me every day, hey, have you thought about treatment? How's your use going? You know, did you take your meds today? Every day. And it's building a relationship. It's giving us to have the opportunity that when I'm ready, and that's another thing with the system. Like, if I'm ready now, you need to give me a treatment now. Not tomorrow, not at 8 o'clock, not I'll pick you up at 5 and take you there. No, right now, let's go. And so you have to be there. You have to know the systems. You have to navigate. So for CCS, we've had now several people in the last 6 months that, because of this is an interview. So when COVID ended, you had to start calling back into Social Security. It didn't really work well for our people. So a lot of our people lost Social Security. So now we're retroactively like rushing back to get them. Hey, wait, did you get that? Get the mail. Did you open the mail? Did you look at the mail? Could you comprehend the mail? So like that sort of thing, like you need to be interacting with their day-to-day existence, checking in if nothing else, building a relationship. Then what do they want to work on? I would say that in my opinion, you have a small sect of people that will always be needing support. But our goal should be independence. Our goal should be to you having your own place, you working on your own, and getting off of the subsidies to being as normal or traditional living situation as possible. That means a lot of time knowing the resources and building a relationship. So I joke that this work, I've become a little more conservative in some of the things about like, oh, we got to figure out the balance between business and doing the work. At the same time, I'll spend all the money. I'll spend it all. But that's where I want more housing, I want affordable. So all the affordable housing, I don't know how much you pay attention to this, don't mean anything to my people. It's a sliding scale. You got to be working full time. You have to have a great credit score, which most of our folks don't. So I want real affordable housing. I want case management. I want them on site. Yeah. Does that answer?
Yeah, no,
I just wanted to address what you were saying about like her comment about not trusting police. I want to urge people, particularly white people, unless you have personal experience and have been personally traumatized by the police, like use your privilege for good. Like there's some of us who are of color and have been traumatized by the police personally, and we're still able to see like a positive side to the police. So I'm just like, how are you unable to? I don't understand that. If you haven't personally experienced it, where is this major mental block coming from? And I just use your privilege for good.
Yes.
Yeah, just following that, that was a huge, like idea during Black Lives Matter movement, sort of when it started really, was how can the social workers or therapists begin a relationship with law enforcement? How can we all be called at the same time? So my more specific question for you, or again, a curiosity, is as a future clinician working in micro, would it be valuable for me, or if you have any ideas that come to mind, of building, like wherever I live or work, building a relationship with the police department then, so that they can call me as LMSW, eventually LCSW, call me to come and be present for something they might need support for.
Potentially, I think
Is that upcoming?
less
do you
with
think?
a particular agency and more know your people. Where are your people intersecting with other agencies and advocating there? Does that make sense? So I deal with a lot of people going in and out of the criminal justice system. So I have a great working relationship with the police. I have a great working relationship with the public defender's office. I have a so-so relationship with the DA's office. I have a great working relationship with the jail social workers and the nurses station. So because I have that intersectionality with most all of my clients, that relationship is vital for me. So anybody that I can get to let me know what's going on and give me an opportunity to advocate or to run interference, then I need that as an ally.
So yeah.
No, go ahead.
So if I start working in a practice after graduation, clocking my hours, is that a program that I could propose at the practice if it doesn't already exist, for them to have these relationships with the
Yes.
organizations, and then
And that's for all of you.
yeah, and then I can
Analyze
deal with
your
my own
agency,
practice.
challenge your bosses, challenge the system. I have to stop and recognize I have bad time management, and I brought this amazing person who's shy and was gonna let me talk the entire time.
Yeah.
Come on up, James, I told you I was gonna do this to you. I don't wanna be up here all by myself, these people stared at me long enough. So James is shy.
More anxiety than shy, but
Both of us, we talked about our anxiety on the way here. When I was kind of coordinating this, Lynette asked for someone with lived experience, and James is that person. I think James is somebody that we have talked about, A, because he's given us permission, but B, through time. I think for this work to be powerful, you want to stay with somebody through time. So until James fires me or us, we're going to hang out. But I think just a little bit from my side, and I'm going to turn it over for you to share what you want or ask questions. He likes questions.
it's easy.
So not Bethel, the Beacon.
Bacon.
And John, you had your own interactions, knew a little bit. We got a transfer from another agency because James didn't check all the boxes at that particular time. And so we are the people that deal primarily with unhoused, homeless folks. And James was down at Library Mall. And I went for about 2-3 months and bugged this poor guy. Hey, how you doing? Hey, how's it going? With various success. But since then, James has had an amazing journey and has gone through, graduated 2 different shared living situations, SRO, into his own apartment. He's about to be forced graduated into a better apartment here when his lease ends up. And one final thing from my point of view, something that was very powerful, because it's all about autonomy and giving a person choice and to grow out of the need for the support, is James had asked for, he had a big team supporting him, engaging in that, engaging in his goals. But when you came and said, like, I think we can pare back, like I don't need as much support, that's when my heart pitter-patter. But no, I think you back to boundaries and professional boundaries. One of the things I talk to staff is if you're not wrestling with the gray areas of rules and morals have bad boundaries, I'm not telling you to do anything ethical, but this job isn't neat, it isn't cut and dry. And if you follow the rules all the time, you're not gonna be the best social worker you can be. And I digress. James, I'm gonna let you talk, ask this man questions. Hi. What do you want to share? Sure.
What made working with Mike and his group different?
You want me to step out of the room?
Yeah, different, like what?
Basically, almost everything. They showed, well, they built my trust. That's huge because you lose all your trust on the streets. They showed me dignity and respect, which you don't get at all on the streets. And they, like you said, they kept coming back and talking to me, and that was huge because you don't get that very often either. So, and then just their wealth of knowledge on the whole system, helping me navigate through the whole system. Awesome.
So we're gonna tag team, I guess.
Yeah.
Back to your question. So I can't bill if someone's under the influence for CCS. First couple months were all voluntary. Now I finagled because of my rules, so I did it as outreach. But I couldn't bill because him being under the influence for the first probably 2 or 3 months. So it was all just voluntary to build a relationship so that we could start to do the work.
And that's huge too, because it showed me that, you know, this person wasn't just getting paid to help you out. They were actually doing it out of the kindness of their heart, you know, and that's huge.
Thanks.
What do you hope, what's your kind of plan for the next year or so? What do you hope to accomplish for yourself now?
Well, continued sobriety is my number one. Working on my mental and physical health is huge for me too. I do have part-time employment. I was disabled pretty bad at the end of my time on the streets. I have a reconstructed leg, so I'm working to get disability and then do other things other than to help me live, you know. Yeah. So, but sobriety is number one. That there was no question on that. I knew if I didn't stay sober, I wasn't gonna get to where I wanted to be again. Me, fortunately, I only spent almost 8 years on the streets, so that it, depending on the person, that can be a short time or a super long time. You know, everybody's experience is different.
I think we're further back than your next.
Hi, congratulations on your sobriety.
Yeah.
Fucking amazing. Can you tell me what Wisconsin Voices for Recovery is?
I'm not even, I mean, I know they run the rally and they're a great organization. I got this at Goodwill actually, so I saw it and I had to buy it.
I love it, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you. We had a staff member that also in recovery who wanted us to present at the rally, which was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So we did. And it's been going on for quite a while. We have another partnership. We have one hospital social worker from Merida Union Point, who's our go-to medical kind of person, who said he spoke at it 10 years ago. So it's been going on for a while. It's a bunch of providers, but it's all of Wisconsin.
Where is it?
It's on the square every year.
Yeah, it's called recovery.
They also do a lot of education around Narcan training and make available Narcan for individuals that might be experiencing overdoses, so.
Thanks for taking time to
Yeah.
come and listen to me battle, y'all.
If I
One
could
more?
just quickly
Yeah. If you have to
thank
go-
you for your vulnerability and
Yeah.
for being here is a big deal because there's so much stigma around
And that's
being unhoused and it's really huge that
and
you.
recovery too.
Yeah, so thank you. You're a great
Not
man.
something easy for a lot of people to do, so I figured, you know, Mike asked me and not a lot of people are gonna wanna do it, so
Yeah.
Public
I
speaking
did
is
do
just
it.
hard in general.
Yeah,
And-
yeah.
I hate public speaking. You're braver than I am.
Other final thoughts, questions? I think Lynette has my email, so if somebody wants to shoot me, yeah.
Just a quick one. So as a student of social work, I just wanted to see if there's any advice as to how to get involved, and any advice you have for like being involved with populations that we're not as comfortable working with.
I would say push yourself in all of those arenas about the uncomfortableness, but then also accept where you're at. So I would say that one of the things I do as a self-reflection, if I have a strong emotional reaction in any degree, I have to check myself if something else is going on. I think that there's a, like uncomfortableness, fear, anger are natural emotions. It's the why. What made you uncomfortable? And then challenge that. So when I was asking the woman about what's your bias towards somebody's the why. It's okay that you have mistrust. Maybe you had something horrible happen to you or a loved one. Maybe you did. Maybe it's needed. But it's the why that's important. And that, in my opinion, everybody deserves help. We have it in a healthy relationship. It's our friends and families. And the people that I work with typically don't have that at all. So it's just the why. And then push yourself. Just always push yourself to be the best version of you. And I think, in my opinion, in life, it's good to surround yourself with people that don't think like you, that don't come from the same background. The more diversity. For me, a personal truth is as many different paths to the same truth gives it more validity, if that makes sense. So just surround yourself with people that are different than you. You'll be surprised. Like it's a blessing to work with John, who on the surface, like our backgrounds, how we look, how we were raised are very different, but yet our core values are very, very similar. And all the time he's like, so one of the things I heard going through school is that only white people can be racist. He's like, that ain't true. Black people are racist. I dated a woman from Japan and was like, yeah, so challenge. Doesn't mean you're right, doesn't mean you're wrong, but listen to different points of view. That's how you really grow as a person and as a professional.
Can people reach out to you to shadow or to learn more, or you not shadow?
On the spot.
Probably not. You can ask. We are trying to now just finally address what volunteerism looks like.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to the trust. We
Right.
try not to roll too many people deep.
Yeah.
So usually paired, maybe 3, but not a lot more, because it's just too much. It's like, who are you? So we've built up the relationship. The agency has a relationship, but it's just tough to bring strangers into a very intimate and challenging, vulnerable spot. So I'm going to go with no, just because I want it to be meaningful to the people as well. And I don't know if I have that. We are doing interns, which is its own challenge, and will continue, which probably isn't useful for anybody right now.
You never know.
Just partner with Briar Patch's youth shelter and outreach and all that.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Jason, for video.
Of course.